Alrighty, hello Blood Bowl fans. Let's have a look at Skaven this time, and I will start off this video by saying I do not play Skaven often. I like Skaven, I like the way they work, but they don't really gel with me too well, so Skaven are not a team I play overly much. I don't have too many hours playing this team, but I have more hours playing Skaven than I do other agility-based teams, which I haven't mentioned before, but I'm not really an agility coach. And you can see if you do frequent my content that is definitely the case. Let's see what Cyanide has said about the Skaven though. A true running team that score one-turn touchdowns. That is very true. And to put it another way, Skaven are actually built to win games. That is their primary purpose. Though it usually comes at the cost of a couple of rats along the way. But they're a team that are very good at actually winning a game, no matter who their opponent is. It's what they are designed to do. They can win the game even when outnumbered, adding to what I just said, and an impressive big guy with a good skill set. I personally love the Rat Ogre. A lot of people are not a big fan of the Rat Ogre, so I agree with this entirely, but a lot of experienced coaches will tell you that he's not necessary, or indeed the team is better without him, and there are many starting builds for the Rat team. I'm only going to have a look at a couple actually when I look at the team build as it is. Weaknesses. Most players are fragile. That is true. Skaven will die during their career, especially linemen, but you will also lose the occasional gutter runner. If you're really unlucky, you will lose a storm vermin, and if you are incredibly unlucky, you will lose your rat ogre. The thrower and linemen are pretty easy to replace, but the rest not so much. And gutter runners are too indispensable. This is true, and I would also add that storm vermin are too indispensable. If you lose too many of these pieces, even if you lose one of the storm vermin in the game, you're going to really struggle. And if they die and they've been leveled up, that's really quite painful in a Skaven team. And the same with the rat ogre. And they can be outnumbered because of the injuries. Skaven are supposed to be outnumbered, it's fine. They may not be all that strong, and they certainly aren't tough, but boy oh boy are Skaven fast. They have the fastest piece in the game actually, the gutter runner. Many times an opponent has been left in the starting blocks as fast-moving Skaven players scamper through a gap in the line and run in for a lightning-fast touchdown. Yeah. Skaven are one of the few teams as well where you can actually naturally build a one-turn touchdown. If you give a gutter runner plus movement and sprint, he can move 13 squares in a turn, which is the exact amount you need to get right down the pitch. And if you manage to get a if you manage to get the kickoff event where you can move one square forward, then you don't even need the sprint. I'll think of the name halfway through the video now, but I can't think of it right now. Let's have a look at the team anyway. So let's call them the Squeaky Squeakers. Nope. Squeaky Squeakers. Squeak. There we go. I wouldn't be overly surprised if that name is actually taken, but who knows. And I'm sorry, but I can't build a Skaven team without going the cheese route. Just can't. There we go. The team isn't taken. Wow. And Cheese Factory. No. Right, let's have a look at some pieces first of all, and starting with the piece that everybody loves to hate, the lovely Gutter Runner. The Gutter Runner is arguably one of the best pieces in the game. It's definitely the fastest, with movement allowance 9, and it can be a really disgusting piece to have to fight. It only has strength 2 at least, so you're almost always going to get a 2 dice against it, but dodge is going to make sure it doesn't go down too easily. It has agility 4, which is slightly above average, and it has armor value 7, which is not really that good, but that's quite common for Skaven pieces. They have general access and agility access, and they also have mutation access on a double, as well as the other 2 passing and strength, which a lot of pieces of course don't have. So Skaven gutter runners can be built quite disgustingly, and they look disgusting in the first place with all the flies running around them. The only skill they start with is dodge, and we've talked about dodge before. And the main role of the gutter runner of course is to score touchdowns, to steal the ball, to basically be a nuisance for the opposition team, to hold the ball, to steal the ball, and to score with the ball, and occasionally to catch a ball, and really occasionally to throw a ball. That's what gutter runners do. You can have up to 4 on the team, and most Skaven coaches take all 4. That's the gutter runner. The second key piece in the team they kind of work in tandem together, is the Storm Vermin. The Storm Vermin has the block, he is the blitzer in the team. He has movement allowance 7, which is slightly above average. He has strength and agility, which are average 3 of each, and he has average armor value of 8, so he's actually a very good Skaven piece in terms of statistics. He has access to general and he has access to strength, so he has access to all the safety pieces and he has access to everything that's going to cause other pieces to die. So normally Storm Vermin are designed one as a strong support piece and one as a murder piece. That's usually what you see in Skaven lineups. Following on from that then, we do have the Thrower, which is very much a piece that you can decide to take, but a lot of people don't decide to take. I personally quite like the Thrower, but my play involves a lot of throwing, so what can I say? And the Thrower has movement 7, strength 3, agility 3, armor value 7. So average in strength and agility, slightly above average in movement, slightly below average in armor. And they start with pass and sure hands, just like the Orc Thrower, but they do have better stats. But to be honest, the pass is actually exactly the same as for an Orc Thrower, but there are pieces in this Skaven team, of course, that can catch better. Pass means you can reroll a failed pass or an inaccurate pass. Sure hands means that you can reroll a pickup. And they have access to general and passing skill. You can make a really good distributor with the Skaven Thrower. He's probably the best distributor in the game, or at least one of them. And you can also make him safe with general, so he usually needs block, and there are a few more things you can give him to help him out. And you can have up to 2 in the team. You can also have up to 2 Storm Vermin, which I forgot to say. The lineman is the rat who holds the line. They are basically there to get punched, but at the same time they can get out of the way if absolutely necessary. The problem with these as linemen is that they are squishy and they do die, or at least get hurt in the process of holding the line. They're not really there to hold the line, they're more to be a support piece in the way than to stand toe-to-toe with something that is bigger, stronger, and probably not as ugly as them, but still. They only have general access as well. They need a double for anything else, but to be honest they don't need one general access because you're not going to see them level up that long. Don't get attached to these pieces, they're not going to last. A lot of people don't even name linemen on the rat team. So we have movement of 7, which is slightly above average. Average strength, average agility, and slightly below average armor value. So like I say, if they're in a fight, there's a good chance that they're going to be the ones who leave the pitch. And linemen basically get block, they can get tackle, you can use them as support pieces, but there's not really much that they can get that's useful to them. So even after 2 or 3 turns, basically, 2 or 3 levels, sorry, basically they're no longer of any great use, and it may even be worth replacing them, or hoping that they die. And the last piece, this is my favourite model by the way, I love this rat on his back, the mascot, he's my favourite player in the whole game. And the Rat Ogre himself, the big brute of a rat. He's stronger than his comrades, he's almost as fast as his comrades, he's very fast for a big guy, and he has, well, average armor value unfortunately, and he's not good at handling the ball. He's the only piece in the team that can't really handle the ball. And the little guy, unfortunately, doesn't really do anything other than wave this flag, which is awesome. He is the Skaven standard bearer. I also love the way that his mouth just kind of twitches every couple of seconds, but that's just me. So stats, we have average movement, way above average strength with strength 5, slightly below average agility with agility 2, and average armored value. In terms of skills, he does have Frenzy, so he can get lost in the crowd if you're not careful about where you make him block. If you remember, Frenzy means that if you get a push or better, the Skaven Rat Ogre automatically follows the opponent is punched. If for some reason that opponent is still standing, he will immediately punch again without you getting a choice, and again he will follow that piece. So you have to be careful how you use Frenzy. Now one thing I didn't mention in the Dwarf one actually, Frenzy can of course get things off the pitch quite easily, but at the same time it can get you into a lot of trouble, so you need to learn how to avoid Frenzy traps. Because you've got to remember that you're always going forward, and forward might mean that you're rolling less dice on your second block. He also has Mighty Blow, which basically helps to cause damage to pieces that are armor broken. Actually, we help with the armor break and we help with the injury, so it actually gives a +1 to both rolls. He does have Loner, so we're not likely to reroll him, because you need to roll a dice in order to reroll whatever he does. He has Prehensile Tail, which is lovely. It means that, as you can see here, I'll read what it says. Opposing players must subtract 1 from the d6 roll if they attempt to dodge out of any of the player's tackle zones. So if you try to avoid this rat, you're going to have a slightly harder time dodging, and there is the prehensile tail, at least half of it. The camera doesn't quite pick it all up. And he has Wild Animal, which is a better skill than Bonehead, because it means that even if he does Wild Animal, which is a 2+ roll, like on Bonehead, he doesn't just stand there going duh, he actually still keeps his tackle zones. So it's slightly better than Bonehead. And sorry, it's only a 2+ actually if you are actually trying to punch something. But on a roll of 1 to 3, the wild animal does not move and rolls in rage instead, and the action is wasted. Blitz makes it slightly safer, as does block, but if you just want to move him, it makes it a slightly less likely thing. It makes it a slightly more likely thing to go off and cause your rat to stay where he is. So most people who play the Rat Ogre really effectively do actually blitz of him, but it's not always advisable. Though if you want to move the Rat Ogre, you're better off blitzing with him because it means that he's less likely to roll this wild animal. There we go. And he only has access to strength like most big guys, so he needs doubles to get the block. On the plus side though, he can get mutations, so he can get some crazy things that really make a Rat Ogre absolutely terrifying. And there we go, that's the big guy. So in terms of building the team, I think the most common build is the all gutter runner build, and I'm going to have to remember if I could do this rightly. So we go 4 gutters. Is that 4? Yep. We always go 2 storm vermin, always, always, always. I think it's 1 thrower, and then the rest linemen. I think that's the most common build. And from that we should be able to have 3 rerolls, and if we want to we can also take an apothecary. If we don't want an apothecary, we can actually take 1 more lineman and have a bench of 12. So you can take the 12-man roster and buy the apothecary after the first game, or you can forget about that and take the apothecary. Also, if we drop the apothecary and we play a slightly less constructed team, so if we sell the thrower, if we don't play with a thrower, and we take a lineman instead, then I'm pretty sure we can have 4 team rerolls and take an apothecary after the first game. I don't think Skaven need 4 rerolls, to be honest. I think 3 is enough, but some people do build it that way. Another option is to drop a couple of gutter runners. We can take that big guy, he's quite expensive, and we can also take the thrower. Blean, sorry. This is probably one of the safest options for taking the Rat Ogre to start with. If you want to as well, you can play 2 rerolls and take the apothecary, but as the rerolls get more expensive after the first game and apothecaries don't, you're better off playing with the 3 rerolls and buying the apothecary after the first game, hoping that your Rat Ogre is still alive. If in the first game your Rat Ogre is killed or injured, well, you're f***ed, basically. So that's it for the builds, and we have every piece here at the moment. Here we do. I don't play Skaven very often, just checking. So, in terms of building this team then, Rat Ogre can be a designated and terrifying blitzer if you give him things that can help him with that. If he rolls a double, he's probably getting block. You can also give him things like tackle if he rolls a double, if he rolls a couple of doubles, but block is really what you want, just to keep him upright. You can also give him break tackle, which means that if he is in a tackle zone, he can break out of it by using strength 5 as his agility on the first attempt. And you can also use him as a kind of stand in the way piece as well. So long as you're blocking with him, the wild animal still goes off at a better rate. So you can give him guard, stand firm, grab, all this good stuff that you give to most big guys. Personally, I use him more as a roadblock than a designated blitzer, but I've seen designated blitzer rat builds work, so there is that. As for the thrower, I think if you're going to play with a thrower, you may as well use him as a thrower, so you want to make him a piece that can move the ball about, so you're giving him these pass skills. Accurate really helps him, it gives him a +1 to any kind of pass. I often give him block, of course, to start with, I sometimes give him pass block as well, so if we do ever get the chance, the ball is going into his hands as opposed to somebody else's. And you can give him lots of lovely things like this, actually. The passing skills in general can really help him. I would really recommend not giving him Hail Mary pass though, because Hail Mary pass means that the pass is automatically inaccurate, which is not really what you want on a Skaven team, though it can sometimes help. So sometimes I actually wish the thrower doesn't have pass and I could just let the inaccurate pass go off, but there we go. In terms of gutter runners, most teams do have all four. You'll usually see one designated carrier who will have dodge, block, sidestep, fend, all this good stuff. You will see a designated sacker who will have dodge, wrestle, strip ball, anything basically that gets a guy on the ground, maybe tackle as well, and the ball is definitely falling out of the opposition's hand. And you take wrestle instead of block, so if a block piece is carrying the ball and you do get a 2 down, you make sure the ball goes to the ground. You can also have just basic, generally annoying rat pieces where they have sidestep, sure feet, anything that basically keeps them on their feet when they're rolling all these crazy dice rolls. And of course you have the natural 1-turn touchdown piece with plus movement, sprint, sure feet, things like this. And if you do get a kickoff return, not a kickoff return, if you do get a kickoff result that allows you to move the 1 space, then you can actually manage a 1-turn touchdown without the movement 10. Storm Vermins usually have a killer and a support piece, like I said, so, or sometimes you can see an elf hunter, but that's less common, I think, in Storm Vermin. Though Storm Vermin are very good at killing elves, to be honest, when it's the one positive side that you have against an elf team that you can actually outbash them, generally speaking. One Storm Vermin is probably going to be a killer, so we've got Mighty Blow to start with, we probably have Claw, we may even have Piling On. Though I wouldn't recommend piling on in most situations with rats, you don't want them on the ground, they will get fouled. And probably 2 lots of guard on both Storm Vermin at some point. And then the support piece is going to have guard, he's going to have tackle, and he's going to have things that can make him really, really awkward to deal with if you are standing next to him. And then for the linemen, if they ever get a double, give them guard. Otherwise, you're looking at block, or you can give them dodge, that's another double option as well, and dodge is a double option for Storm Vermin as well. You're going to give them block, and you're maybe going to give them tackle, you're maybe going to give them fend, you're maybe going to give them frenzy if you're feeling crazy. There are a few things you can give them, but block is the only thing they realistically need, because you're not really doing too much with a lineman most of the time. And the most successful Skaven teams I see actually do play with the 11 players, and they manage to make it work. With the all 4 gutter runners, with the 2 Storm Vermin, the thrower, and the Rat Ogre, and then whatever linemen happen to still be alive. But keeping the positionals alive is more important than keeping these little things alive. They're gonna die, so say goodbye to them as soon as you hire them. Though I do see other successful teams that have 13 to 14 players, though the only problem with that, of course, is that you are giving up 100 to 150,000 TV for free. So it's up to you whether you try to play that way or not. I didn't say that about dwarves, orcs, and humans so much, but generally speaking, humans only have 1 or 2 on the bench. Dwarves don't usually have any unless they have the Death Roller, and the orcs usually have 1, sometimes 2, depending on the way the orc team is built. Anyway, that's it for the squeaky squeakers squeak. Let's have a look at some developed Skaven teams then, including my own. I'm not going to have a look at the AI one this time, because I actually have a relatively developed Skaven team somewhere. The one that's in Wood Wars, I'm going to find that one first, the Wooden Rats. They've only had 1 game, and they haven't had a level up yet, but I did go for the Rat Ogre build. So Rat Ogre, 2 Storm Vermin, 2 Gutter Runners, Thrower, and then 11 linemen, and I bought the Apothecary after the first game. So that was the way I played this team. That was in a somewhat competitive game. And I also have a team that's had a couple of games now. They are developing relatively nicely. Come on. And I didn't actually go for a Rat Ogre build this time. I went for the 4 Gutter Runner build because I wanted to try it out instead. And I've had some nice little doubles here, but as you can see, the thrower has been given block. One of the Gutter Runners is a dodge block piece that's probably going to get sure feet. That's probably going to get sidestep next. I'm already working on a one-turn touchdown gutter runner because he rolled a plus movement. I've got one with wrestle. He's going to be a stripper. A strip ball, not a. Yeah, you get it. And I have one who actually rolled a double, and I gave him really long legs because I want to make him a leap piece that's just going to be a really awkward piece that can work like a war dancer but with more movement. So there's that, and the first Storm Vermin has been given Mighty Blow, the second one will be as well, but they both will also get Guard later on. And the linemen haven't leveled, and I'm quite happy about that. And the Rat Ogre unfortunately hasn't taken any SPP yet because I bought him after I started the team. He's actually the newest member of the team. I did start without the Rat Ogre, but I've bought him since. One of my linemen died. Oh well. So that's the Rat team. In terms of strategy when you're playing opposition of different types, I don't think I've missed anything. We'll find out though when I've finished with the video. It feels like this one's been pretty short. In terms of specific strategy, I will reiterate I am not really much of a Skaven coach, so I've seen what Skaven do when I'm playing against them more than my own strategies that I've put into practice. But from what I can tell, against humans, humans are not really the best opponent you can see, but at the same time they're not the worst. The reason they're not the best is because they can cause you problems, they can cause some damage, and they can mostly keep up with you. The Gutter Runners can outrun literally anything in the game, but the humans have the best chance, have one of the best chances of sticking with you towards the end, especially with the level 8, movement 8 catches. They can actually keep up with the Gutter Runners pretty well. The main thing with humans is to make sure you keep hold of the ball if you are on offense, and try and basically run around the human team while using the linemen to screen so the humans can't get to the Gutter Runners easily. You can use the thrower to help you maneuvering the ball as well. If you do have a Rat Ogre, then the Rat Ogre should be hitting as many humans as possible, as should the 2 Storm Vermin, because you're trying to do a little bit of damage. And when you have Mighty Blow on the team, it can really help. The Rat Ogre starts with it, so he should be hitting any important piece he can possibly hit. On defense, basically you want to create a screen with two pieces, always with 2 tackle zones in between them, so the humans can't break through. You're better off standing off the team and standing about 1 square back from where the team is, so they can only make a slow advance. The Storm Vermins and the Rat Ogre should be doing their best to pick off humans as they can, and basically just trying to whittle the humans down and slowing them down, frustrating them as much as possible. If the humans do make a mistake though, go and steal that ball. Try and get it out of the way. One thing I see coaches do wrong is that they automatically go for the ball, and you don't necessarily need to take the ball in one turn, but you need to make sure the humans can't pick it up and you can take it safely the turn after. And that's the same strategy for a lot of offensive play actually. When the opponent makes a mistake, make sure you secure the ball. Orcs is not really a fun matchup for Skaven, I think, because Orcs hurt, and Orcs hurt a lot. Though, when you're playing against Orcs, basically it's a very similar strategy. You want to stay off them as much as possible. Don't try and fight them. That will hurt a lot. The Black Orcs especially are a problem, but they are slow, so you can usually get away from them. You're usually better off dodging as opposed to blocking against Orcs if possible. Though there are some situations when you're on a Blitzer, for example, it's pretty easy to get a 2-die with an assist, so you can usually knock them down and then get out of the way. But with a Black Orc, a lot of the time you're better off dodging out the way as opposed to trying to fight them. In terms of defense, the Orcs are really slow, so you basically just got to slow down that advance and try and focus down the thrower, the goblin, whoever has the ball. If it's a Blitzer, then it's a bit harder, but if it's a goblin or if it's a thrower, there's a chance that you can steal it and take it into the touchdown zone. Another thing I see Skaven coaches do wrong in general is that they try to score way too much. Skaven teams can score 6-0, it's something that can happen, and it's something that can happen with just a little bit of help from the dice. You don't need too much really. But when you do that, every time you score, you give the opponent free blocks. So if you're playing against Orcs, if you're playing against Dwarfs, if you're playing against strong attrition-destroying teams, then you want to be scoring as little as possible, because scoring a lot is going to be a problem, giving your opponent these free blocks that you don't really want to give them. And when we're talking about dwarves then, with dwarves, again, they're a very slow team, so you can mostly run around them, you can mostly stand off them, just keeping one square between you and them. They're going to blitz one piece every turn, but so long as they're only punching one of your guys, you've got a good chance of surviving the fight. It's difficult to focus down dwarves, but if you can hit the troll slayers and if you can hit the runners, then do your best to do so. And if you do have the rat ogre, then hit whatever looks the juiciest, because he does have mighty blow, same with the orcs, just hit whatever looks the best to hit. The only major difference with dwarves is that if they cage up, it's very, very difficult to break into it. So mostly you want to make sure that they can't cage up. Try and keep the dwarves separate as much as possible by giving them targets to aim for, basically. Try and make the dwarves chase you all around the pitch so they can't secure the ball. And as soon as you get the dwarves out of position, you can usually focus down the ball carrier and steal it from them. When talking about elves in general, I keep saying elves in general because the strategy is usually quite similar when playing dark elves and high elves, and wood elves is a little bit different. When playing against elves, of course, they are the other team that are pretty fast, like you. With high elves, dark elves, and wood elves, what it mostly comes down to is whichever team makes the most injuries. Now, saying that, you don't want to be standing toe-to-toe with elves, because generally speaking, they have more armor than you, unless they're wood elves. If it's wood elves, then you're 50-50, but you still don't want to be fighting them. Against elves, you want to pick off pieces one by one as much as possible, and basically get in their way and try and pick the fights. If you can pick the fights, you can win these games. If the elves are picking the fights, then you're going to struggle to play. So that goes for both high elves and dark elves. The witch elf also has the extra worrying thing that she has frenzy, so she can push your pieces off the pitch if you let her. On the opposite side of that, though, she can get stuck in a place where she doesn't really want to be, where she's surrounded by rats. So you can create traps for the witch at the same time. It takes a bit of practice, though. In terms of Bretonnians, your obvious advantage is still the speed and the agility, but you do have a disadvantage of all that block, and the Bretonnians can actually get in your way with Fend. Fend is a really awkward skill for pieces that don't do too much damage. Even though the Bretonnian lineman only has armor value 7, the Fend can really make it difficult to create gaps for your rats to run through. So when you hit a Bretonnian piece, if you don't manage to knock him down, he's going to be in the way. So sometimes it's a bit of a slow slog against Bretonnians. But mostly focus on the lineman and try to keep as many pieces off those blitzers as possible. With Chaos are actually a lot quicker than you'd expect, but you can still mostly run around them, and you want to avoid fighting with the Chaos Warriors as much as possible, and of course fighting the Minotaur as much as possible. Though, if you can focus down the Beastmen in the same way as we have been before, then usually you're going to be okay, and stand off them as much as possible, pick your fights. With all of these teams, it's all about picking your fights, basically. Make sure that you're in control of who's getting punched, and dodge out when you don't think you can win. I would argue that you don't always want to dodge a lineman out, though. Sometimes, even though they're going to take a block, it's better than being in the way and getting hit than trying to dodge out and loosening a piece that can cause danger to your ball carrier, to your thrower, to one of your positionals, basically. So if the lineman can safely dodge out, then sometimes it's better than trying to punch. If the lineman can't safely dodge out and also can't punch, he's usually better off just staying where he is and hoping he doesn't get killed. But linemen, their job is always to get punched. Having a look at the Wood Elf team then, the only team that can really match you ball for ball, it's basically a game of who can score more than the other when we're Wood Elves against Skaven. Though Skaven are slightly better at killing things than Wood Elves, though the War Dancers are pretty good at putting up a fight as well. So trying to avoid the War Dancers as much as possible, which is an impossible task, but doing it all the same. And trying to get rid of linemen, trying to get rid of catchers, trying to get rid of throwers, just trying to win the attritional war against Wood Elves by, again, picking your fights, not by going toe-to-toe with them. If you're going toe-to-toe, you're basically flipping a coin, whichever team you're playing in this situation. But if you're trying to specifically pick off pieces that are a bit weak, you have a chance of having more numbers, and whichever team has more numbers in these games are probably going to end up with the higher score. Lizardmen are a really tough matchup for rats because they have so much strength that can move so fast and it's very difficult to avoid them. And even the skinks can really get in your way and they can cause problems for your gutter runners. In a strange kind of way, the teams are built relatively similarly, though the lizards rely more on strength than on bullshit play, whereas the Skaven rely more on bullshit play. So the basic structure of the team is quite similar, in that you have 4 really squishy guys at the back, and then you have other pieces that are mostly there to get in the way and protect those really squishy guys. Lizards really want to fight you though, and Skaven don't want to fight, so that's the main difference. Getting your Rat Ogre, if you have one, to take out Saurus is usually a good idea, but as safely as possible, usually in combination with the Storm Vermin. The Gutter Runners need to relatively slowly make their way around the Lizard front line and avoid skinks, so you need to have support of a secondary, relatively fast piece who can help with the screen and can deal with any skinks who manage to get in your way. And when talking about defense, you want to try and knock out the skinks as much as possible, and basically same kind of thing, stand out of the way, but stand slightly back but in the way as much as possible. Norse is actually a surprisingly difficult matchup for Skaven just because of the abundance of block on the Norse team. If you try and fight the Norse, they will win, generally speaking. Even though you have the same armor value, their blocks are safer, so they're more likely to knock out pieces than you are. It works very similarly to the Elf team, but the Norse team actually want to try and fight you instead of trying to get around you. So you want to pick off pieces as much as you can and stand out of the way. Do your best to lock down Ulffareners and Berserkers, try and avoid the Yeti, and basically try and pick off linemen, try and pick off runners, try and pick off anything that's kind of in your way. Though it's not a very easy task against Norse. Undead is probably also one of the hardest teams for Skaven to deal with because they have a pretty solid roster and they're also relatively fast with the ghouls. Ghoul against the Gutter Runner isn't really a good matchup for you, so it's not necessarily a good idea to try and beat up the ghouls with the relatively similar pieces. Though if you can knock out the ghouls with your other pieces, that would be great. Avoiding the mummy at all costs, which should be pretty easy as Skaven, and even trying to get out of the way of the white whenever you can, and also not really getting into a numbers match against zombies and skeletons, because zombies and skeletons are more likely to come back than your guys are. So try not to fight them too much, try and run around and deal with their negative chances of picking up the ball while stealing it whenever you can. Necromantic tactics are actually quite similar, but the wolves are a lot faster than any other piece in the undead team. So same kind of thing, stay off the flesh golems, try to avoid the whites, try to avoid the wolves as much as possible, though do punch them if you get the chance, and if there are ghouls then try and hurt them as well. Whenever you have a zombie in front of you, make sure that you have 1 zombie to 1 rat. Try not to get outnumbered by the opposition. Your linemen kind of have to cancel each other out. Keep in mind as well though, if a zombie punches you, you're more likely to get injured than the zombie, so don't try and outfight them. Nurgle is a team that is an interesting matchup for Skaven. I haven't really played this matchup very often, though I'm pretty much aware that with all of that disturbing presence it's quite hard to move the ball around, so you want to use your designated carrier as opposed to the pass play as much as possible. Again, it's very much the same story. Just try and avoid the pieces. Don't get into a fight with them. Stand off them when they're on offense, and on defense. When they're on offense and you're on defense, and when you're on offense, then do your best to get around them, get through them, make gaps, and use them as much as possible. Any mistake from any team as well, capitalize on it, and try and steal the ball. Khemri is kind of a similar story. Avoid the Tomb Guards, avoid the Blitzras, punch the skeletons, though don't try and have a war of attrition. And Chaos Dwarves are one of the harder races to face as Skaven. I think they're one of the toughest out of the teams that are currently rostered. The main reason is because the Bull Centaurs can chase down your Gutter Runners to an extent, especially with Sprint and Sure Feet. The Minotaur cancels out your Rat Ogre, and the Dwarves are obviously a problem because they all have Tackle and they are going to get in your face. The Dwarves are slow at least though. The Hobgoblins are the one thing that you can fight back against, but still. You want to try and split up the opposition team as much as possible so the dwarves can't work in groups. And you want to try and avoid the bull centaurs as much as you can. The bull centaur should be chasing you more than being in your way or standing on you. The minotaur you want to mostly ignore, and the hobgoblins, they're the guys you want to be punching whenever you get the chance. On defense, same kind of thing. Stand out of their way and try and steal the ball. And I think that's it for Skaven. I'm not a huge Skaven coach, so anybody who is a huge Skaven coach, by all means give more feedback in the comments below. I just want to mention it one more time as well, just very quickly, because I did make an announcement, but let's mention it again. I now have a Discord channel for this YouTube channel. If you do want to come talk to me there, give me feedback directly, and be the first to know what's coming up next, please do join me, say hello, I look forward to seeing you there. For everybody who's watched this video, and for everybody who comments below, I'm really loving these comments, thank you very much, and thank you for viewing as well. Hopefully I'll see you all soon, in Discord, on the pitch, whatever. Good luck in your games, and as always, have fun. Bye bye for now.